before the arenas, before the awards.
This is b4Nashville Live. Have a question for our guest? Send it to us via Messenger.
Here's your host, George Davis.
Hey, welcome back to Before Nashville, introducing the country stars of tomorrow to the country fans of today. And joining me, we'll get into who he is, but right now a little bit about him. He grew up in Colorado. He's now in Nashville. And he's got a big fan of a certain guitar player. Well, a couple of certain guitar players from Nashville. But we'll talk about a little of that coming up here shortly. We'll get with him in just 30 seconds, so hang out.
Before Nashville is proudly sponsored by Go-Go Tuners, the go-to tuner for professional and amateur musicians. Get your Go-Go Tuner at gogotuners.com. By Heart to Heart Coffee, the coffee that gives back. Find out more at heart2heartcoffee.com. By Sibby's Apparel, worn by heroes, made with respect. Order yours at sibbysapparel.com. And by Three Rangers Whiskey, not for the weak or faint-hearted. ThreeRangers.com.
Always want to shout out to the sponsors and thank them for having us on. So this guy, he was born and raised in Colorado and got to liking country music. Of course, some places that's just all there is country music. But very interesting story. He is a little bit of everything: songwriter, singer, guitar player, and his name is Johnny Day. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going, George? How are you, sir?
Oh, good, man. Yeah, you doing all right?
Good. I'm doing great, man. I'll hang out with you.
Awesome, man. We've just one of the things about is I love to talk to the artists that come on beforehand just to kind of get some, a little bit of feel of everything. And we've been having a good conversation. So it's been really great, and probably should have had the majority of that recorded just because it kind of falls in line and there's so much good stuff in it. But you, I got to say, now you grew up in Colorado.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about, is it Kersey or Kersey?
It's like Jersey, but with a K. So Kersey.
Kersey,
Colorado, man. You'll drive right through it if you're not paying attention. So
what was life like back there?
Man, life back in Colorado, it was very dry compared to, like, climate wise, very dry compared to Tennessee. But it was beautiful. I had a great childhood, man. I lived in a great little town. I lived in the little suburbs for a little while. And so I was always out with my friends, in the ditch, riding the bikes all around town, trying to find out who my girlfriend was going to be. Did a lot of walking, that's for sure. And it was cool because, like the football team, everyone knew everyone. There, you couldn't go anywhere without knowing somebody, so you definitely were on your best behavior most of the time. And I love it. Man, it's just gotta, anywhere where you grow up at. And I was there my whole life too. So went to kindergarten there, met my wife there. And then it's graduated and everything. Thank goodness they let me graduate, but they did. I can't believe they did. But I was a hellraiser there towards the end of my high school career. But man, it was great. I love Kersey. Kersey is my home. It'll always be my home, and so grateful for the people there. They're very supportive. Even now, I have them hit me up, like, wishing me the best and sharing everything, and that's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you gotten to go back there at any point to do like a hometown show, or if they have like a fair or festival or anything going on around there?
Yeah, so I've played it when I was younger, man. I played everywhere in that town. So they all knew me growing up as the guitar playing kid. I played the Kersey days. I played that a couple times with a couple different bands. Once my headlining myself, but with a couple different bands. My first show was at a bar called the KI, just a bar. I was like 12 years old. They let me sneak me in. It was New Year's Eve and snuck me in on it. And that, I'll never forget that. I was just scared, I was sitting there looking at my chord chart. And other than that, I was actually invited a couple years back. I think it was about 2 years ago. There was a pep
Yeah.
rally, and they had me come and sing what song was it? It was a Queen song. It was "We Will Rock You," and what and AC/DC. I did "Thunderstruck" too. So that was pretty cool. Like they had the lights, and I had my wireless guitar, so like I started in the back and made a big old thing, slid out, and yeah, it was pretty cool. So the
Oh,
kids
awesome.
loved it. My brother-in-law was a junior at the time, and it was funny because I didn't know any of the kids at that point. I had graduated like 8 years before that, and so then I
Mhm.
like you get out and everyone's asking like, oh, they're all like pointing at me and stuff. I'm like kind of walking around outside, everyone's tripping out, and it's pretty cool. It's been a lot of fun.
That
Definitely.
was your first taste of rock stardom?
It was kind of crazy. It was like, man, this is a little different. I could definitely see how it could go to one's head, pretty
Yeah.
quick. So, but no, I was great. The kids were amazing, and I just hope I was a good influence on them.
Yeah.
So
If they only knew. I'm
if they
kidding.
only knew. Hey, we all go through those times. We all
That's right.
grow up, and that's how you learn. Sometimes you
Absolutely.
got to get your hands a little dirty to figure it out. Some of us gotta learn the hard way. So
Right. Trust me. How
yeah,
well I know.
yeah, I did there for a while. So
So when did the music bug bite you? Because you said you were 12 playing in a bar. So, I mean,
I,
how
it's-
old were you
I
when you
think I was
first got
I
in?
was 13 in the bar actually. I got my first
Okay.
guitar at 12 years old.
Okay.
And I had seen a friend of mine's older brother playing guitar, and he was really good. He was playing songs I'd heard on the radio, and I was just like, "What?" Like I'd really, and because my sisters and I, we would just drive around and listen to music because she was
Mhm.
old enough to drive, and so we just drive around listening to songs, all the time. That's what we did for fun. Our parents
Right.
and gas was a lot cheaper back then, so we could do it. So, well, actually, I don't remember. I don't remember the price of gas back then. But I'm pretty sure it was cheaper. We'd just drive around and listen to these songs, and then I went and I showed up at my buddy's house, and his older brother was playing one of those songs, and I was like, "Whoa, how is he doing that?" Like, it just blew my mind. I couldn't believe it that someone could make a guitar. So I went over there and tried to do it, and I was like, "Holy mackerel, this is hard." So I
Mhm.
told my mom, I'm like, "Hey, I really want a guitar for Christmas. I think that'd be super cool." And I didn't really expect her to give me one, but she did. And my dad got it. My dad wanted to give me something related to football, but my dad's a football fanatic. But
Oh,
yeah, so I was supposed to be a quarterback. I wasn't supposed to be doing country music. I can tell you that. But uh, so yeah, she got me that guitar, and then I was just addicted to it. I was addicted to playing, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I just go in my room and for hours, just pound on that thing and try and
mhm.
make it do something. Uh, and and then so she introduced me to Tom Cable. He was about 50 at the time, and they were playing a lot of Rolling Stones and Stevie Ray Vaughan, and they introduced me to all that old classic rock and
Yeah.
Santana and incredible stuff. So I went in, and my mom brought me downstairs, and I had this little podunk acoustic guitar, and I showed up and just watched them, and they rehearsed for like 4 hours, and I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And they're like, yeah, well, if you want to come back and play with us next week, just come. You can play my guitar and use my amp. And I was like, really? And he had this sweet guitar too. It was blue. It's like my favorite color. So it was an old Ibanez, but it was
Mhm.
it was like a jazz style guitar. I came back, had a Bigsby whammy bar on it. I came back and he let me play it, and man, I hit that first chord, and I was really scared, honestly. Let's be honest at first, because these guys are going along. I'm trying to keep up with just the chords on the chart, that first time, and from that moment on, like being in that band with them, that's all I could think about was playing guitar and learning how to play, and then eventually I did, and
Yeah.
yeah, got pretty good, got decent, and started playing. His whole goal with me was, hey, start playing the leads so I could just sing and play rhythm. So that was like, as a kid, being told that, it was like that was my everything. I was going to learn how to play lead guitar and be able to just improv solos. And Yeah, that's what we did, and I eventually started doing it, and then before you knew it, I will never forget the time we were at it was like a dance studio or something. I think someone was having a birthday party, and they invited us to come play this really loud rock band. Like it was really loud, ridiculously loud. But we go in there, all the parents are drinking and having a good time. And I remember by the end of the thing, we were playing Freebird, and I was 13 or 14 at the time playing Freebird. And the people were just like, what? You know, it was one of those things before TikTok where you just didn't see that stuff every day. And so they gave me a big old tip, and then I think I played like Eruption after that. And my dad's just sitting in the back crying, you know, and and from that moment on, I'm like,
he was either loving it or his ears were hurting, one or the other.
no, he was loving it. He was loving it, man. He was just sitting there crying. I'll never forget it. And just balling up. My dad's a crier, especially with his kids.
Yeah.
And then from that moment on, man, I was like, okay, this is probably what I'm going to do with my life, you know? So,
Yeah. So as time started going on, you started getting more and more involved and decided you picked up on a certain country guitar player who wears a very oddly shaped cowboy hat.
him and old Tim, huh?
Yeah, him and old Tim both. Yeah.
They do that redneck thing. That's what my dad always called it.
Their neck can never get red with the way the back of that hat's been.
Oh, it's because they've had that bad burn. You know, once you get that bad burn once or twice, you know, you're like, I'm trying to steer away from that.
Exactly. But you got into Brad, you know, Paisley, and I mean, phenomenal guitar player.
Yeah.
And now, how old were you about the time Brad came to be one of your influences?
So funny enough, my mom, she was you ever heard of the Greeley Stampede? Maybe not. It's like a rodeo. It's every year in
Yeah.
Colorado, and he was there one year. I think I was in 8th grade. So I was about however old you are in 8th grade. My mom said, "Come listen to this guitar player. He's incredible." And at that time, I was not big on country music. At that time in my life, I listened to it, loved it growing up with my dad, going on the rides. Got into my teenage years, and I was more into like hard or like rock and roll and stuff like, you know, I was a teenager. And so I go, and she's like, "Come out and watch." And I refused to. I was like, "I'm not listening to that." So I'm sitting there behind the concession stand because she worked the concession stands at the concerts. And I'm sitting there listening to this. I'm like, whoa, like, what is that? And I still remember being like, I never saw it. I just could hear it because I was being a little kid. I was being a little turd. And and then a couple years later, when I was a junior in high school, the same older brother that got me into playing guitar, he's like, "Man, you want to know the best guitar player ever?" He'd always say this to me about guitar players. He'd be like, "You want to know the best one ever? It's Brad Paisley." And I was like, "Really?" So I go start listening to him, and I was like, "Whoa!" I'm like, he's playing lead guitar and he's singing, and there's girls like in the front row, and that's what I want to do right there. And it sounds amazing. I love these songs. Like there's harmony to it. And I was getting really into like that part of music at that time in my life too. Cause early on I was more into like, you know, guitar playing, shredding, play as fast as you can, play the coolest thing. Still melodic, but not like singing songs with stories and whatnot. And then I think it was on Vivo. He was playing Ticks. Big old video. He's still up. I still watch it to this day. I go back and watch that Vivo video anytime I need some inspiration. I saw him doing it. I was like, wow, man, that's what I want to do. So I was a junior in high school. I was like, that's what I'm going to do with my life. I didn't tell anyone then because I was still kind of on the, I was more on the outskirts of being country and like wanting to sing and all that good stuff. Like I sung in choir and everything, but I wasn't like a big singer. I was more just playing guitar. Back then we all lived in the country. So like if dudes were in the choir, it wasn't necessarily the coolest thing ever. And I did it a couple times, but just wasn't something, I did a lot. But I always knew I could, just cause growing up in church and stuff, we'd sing songs and it's like, oh, okay. I could do that. So I started studying. So what happened then, I graduated high school And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm a guitar player. I have the guitar player mindset. And I'm like, so I need to get his guitar, because no matter what I do, I need to get a guitar like that and that amp, because no matter what I do, that's what I thought at the time. Mind you, my views have changed a little bit now, because I can get pretty much any, like if I get the right amp, I can get it sound pretty close to how I want it.
Right.
But I was like, I got to get that amp and that guitar. So I joined the oilfield out of high school. I went to college. Like I said, I was telling you earlier, I went to college for like a couple semesters, did some music theory, and then didn't ever go to my English classes, because I was like, I'm not writing any more essays. And so I jumped in the oilfield. I was on the pipeline, x-raying pipe, and saved up. Wasn't making much at all. I was making like $13 an hour, but we'd work, man, sometimes it'd be like 80 hours a week. We just never go home. So I did that for about 8 months, and really learned what work was. And because I did a little bit of work growing up, but not like that. And so got that guitar, bought that amp, quit the oil field for a good minute. I was like, Mom, hey, I'm gonna come move back in with you so I can just play my guitar. I get the amp, and the amp is so loud. Like the Z-Rec, I got a Z-Rec Junior here now, but the Z-Rec, oh, you cannot play it in your house. So it was like I worked all that time for that amp, and it's so loud. Like you can't sit and like if you turn it down like all the way, it's like you could barely hear it, and then you barely nudge it a little bit, and it's like blowing your head off.
Right.
So I was like, oh, that kind of stinks. So I was like, Mom, sorry. I'm gonna be kind of blast this thing for a little bit. So then I got another job. And yeah, I always since then I think I was about 19. Just ever since then I've been studying Brad Paisley and just trying to figure out how he did what he was doing. And still to this day, I still go back and I'm still learning Brad Paisley records, and him and Glenn Campbell. Those are the two that I go after. And I try to figure out like what were they thinking, when they were doing this. And then I try and get into that zone and think about it my own way,
Yeah. And that's one of the things a lot of people, working in classic country and hearing people talk about, some of the classic country artists like Glenn Campbell, a lot of people didn't realize how a lot of young people, people today didn't realize what kind of guitar player Glenn Campbell was. He was a phenomenal guitar player.
Scary guitar player.
Yeah. And he was very, like him and oh gosh, Roy Clark.
Yeah, we were talking about him last time. Yeah,
Roy. Man, he could play guitar, and then you got Glenn, and just so many great people that back in their day, that could play the dickens out of a guitar, and then you got people like Brad Paisley and Keith Urban and probably John Osborne.
Yeah.
And some of those guys now that are phenomenal guitar players that look probably, grew up on them, and they're going, my gosh, these were my idols, Glenn Campbell and Roy Clark and some of those other guys, and BB King, getting into some of that. And then you probably get into like the Eddie Van Halen's of the world and that kind of stuff.
Any person that grew up in the 80s was studying Van Halen, most of them, because the guy was just revolutionary. But yeah, they were incredible. And like we were talking about earlier, they didn't have a lot, they did so much with so little. It blows me away. And I'll go back and watch the old Glenn Campbell show, with him and Jerry Reed, and they're just sitting there trading solos and singing. And it was like, man, these guys were the pioneers for what I want to do, because there was nobody else that really did it like that, especially in country music. You got like Jerry Reed and Glenn Campbell that really were playing the guitar and singing and and especially Glenn, just, man, he was he could just sing. He could have got away with just singing, but the guy was just an incredible guitar player too. And the fact that he could do it both so well at the same time, it's hard. It takes a lot of practice. I've definitely practiced my butt off making it happen. And then that paves the way for the, you know, through the 90s. It wasn't, I mean, Brad started coming in around the 90s.
Mhm.
And then Keith started coming in around the 90s. And really, like, I think like Keith and Brad are standing on the shoulders of Glenn in my eyes. When I look
Oh, yeah.
back, I'm like, he was the man that started that whole thing. And there's others that I'm missing as well, but they're the two most prevalent guys today that are doing it. And so, man, I could talk about
Yeah.
it all day, man. I love it. I love that
Yeah.
stuff.
And you mentioned Jerry Reed, and one of the things I think back to Jerry that I'd forgotten this, but and I might be wrong here, but and as a guitar player, you could probably school me on the importance of this, but pick selection was a big thing, and I'm sure Jerry's sound was either he was really gripping the pick low, or he just had super stiff picks because he had kind of that tink sound whenever he go to play a riff or a solo or something. He just had that
Yeah.
little, you know, and Glenn was more and I'm accompanying them to what I know about guitar playing
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the rules of it. Glenn was more like the thinner gauge pick to where it's a little bit softer and not quite as chinky, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, Jerry had definitely there was a lot of high end.
Mhm.
He liked the high end for sure coming out of that guitar. Um, Glenn, for me, like Glenn in my eyes, he did a lot of that 12-string guitar playing, on
Mhm.
like Wichita Lineman and all those where he played like the lead licks, and I saw him play a crazy solo on a 12-string that was just incredible. And I think a lot of that, the pick matters too, but also just how you touch it,
Yeah.
and how you have your amp set and where you pick on the guitar. Like if you pick closer to that bridge, and that's where like, a lot of Jerry Reed stuff comes from. And
Mhm.
if you pick close to that bridge, it's gonna be higher and tinier, and it's gonna poke through a lot harder than if you're kind of, towards the middle in between the pickups. I know we're getting really deep into guitar nerdery stuff, but that's a lot where it comes from. You'd be surprised. You can get, the thinner pixel, you can still get a pretty twangy pitch sound out of that.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty, and yeah, don't let me go any further. I'll take us on it. I could talk about stupid stuff like that for days.
I think I told you before, I need to get you and my cousin together because you guys
Yeah,
would sit and talk for hours because
yeah,
he's a guitar player and has
yeah,
done some stuff, just amazing stuff. And you guys would, oh man, that would
yeah.
be like a week conversation and neither one of you would sleep for 7 days.
Right, right. We'd have to start a guitar podcast.
Exactly. Exactly. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
Now as you're going on and you're kind of continuing to play and stuff, and then you start getting into songwriting. How were you when you started writing songs?
Man, I mean, I feel like I was not like Taylor Swift or nothing like that for sure.
Mhm.
So what got me into songs and writing songs was back in high school. I started writing songs with this guy. His name was Josh Shear. And he was in college at the time. He was like a junior or senior in college. And I thought it was cool that he even wanted to hang out with me because he was a lot older and he was going to CSU, and he'd invite us up to, hang out, and they'd be partying, and we thought it was cool. And
Mhm.
he wanted to write songs. And at first they were like alternative songs. So it was more like guitar, right? I was writing on the guitar, like writing riffs and stuff. And then it turned into, he's like, dude, like just sit. And it was a band. It was in a band kind of,
Mhm.
um, uh, the word slipping my mind, but in that kind of atmosphere. Um, and then he, one day he was just like, hey, dude, you want to just like write a song, me and you, just with like an acoustic guitar? And he's like, I kind of want to go for this more folkier sound. And I was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And we ended up writing this song called On My Way. And it got on the radio
Oh
in
man.
Colorado. And I was like, I was still in high school, and I heard it on the radio, and I was like, man, this could actually be something I could do, like write songs, and they get played on the
Mhm.
radio. And it won a bunch of, well, not a bunch of awards, but it won, like, it was called Hometown for the Holidays out in
Uh-huh.
Colorado. And like the winner got to play it I forgot what the wing thing was, but it was cool. You know, it's cool. You got all kinds of cool, fancy stuff. And 93.3 hooked you up with all kinds of cool stuff. And it won. And it was like the first song I'd ever been involved in writing. And so I was like, man, I could do this. And then, I kept writing songs with him for a while. And then started coming out to Nashville. I think I was 21. Well, that's a whole nother story, man. What got me like really going into country music. We could get into it, but I don't know if you want to, because it's a long, not long, but it's a very detailed, story that might take a minute. So yeah, that's what got me into writing.
Another podcast. We'd have to do another episode on that.
Long story short is I got my heart broken when I was about 21. My buddy, it was a bad one. It was just a sticky situation. Good friends now. We're all good now. But he, like, you know, I went and I really changed my life at that moment, because I was like, man, at that point I had been partying a lot, and I was like, man, there's got to be a better way, and I should be further along than I am. And so I went and I saw my teacher, met her in Chili's, my high school teacher. She was amazing. Gave my life to Jesus. Long story short, got back in the oil field after I quit that pipeline job, and got the money to start making music again, like to produce it myself. Because like I said, like we were talking earlier, to produce songs and records back then, even 10 years ago, was a lot more expensive than it is now. That sounded worth a darn. So I started saving up money to do that, and started coming here into Nashville. And that's when I met up with Cherie Austin and started writing these country songs, her and Will Rambo, and started getting my feet wet writing country songs a lot of the times. And I was writing songs. I'd written about 8 or 9 songs in Colorado before I started doing that. And that's kind of where the whole songwriting thing took me. And now I'm still writing songs. Wrote like 3 today. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's craziness, man. Yeah. There's plenty of songs to be written. And the cool thing now, like, because life is always changing. Culture is always evolving. It's always the same, but it's kind of different. It has its nuances with all the different technologies that we have. And so there's always a song, you know, and songs are just something special, because when they really click and they really connect, there's nothing like it. You know, there's just nothing like it.
Right.
I mean, it's just like watching Chris Stapleton sing that national anthem. You're just like,
oh my God.
My gosh, man. And I love the national anthem. Honestly, it's that one. And then, you know, I love patriotic songs, so I'm all about that. But yeah, they're just different and they connect. And nowadays in the whole songwriting world, when I think about writing songs, I'm really just trying to find something that connects with my life and that's real to me, and that I could see happening in my life, because that's the most authentic thing I could put out that will most likely relate to somebody else. And I don't know if you've ever heard this term, but songwriting is not a glamorous process. Like, it's very, we kind of sit in the room for like an hour and talk about our lives, and then a little bit psychology, you know, we go through like a little session together, and then see what's kind of tickling us, and see what's kind of interested in the room, I guess, and write about it. And sometimes you get something good and sometimes you don't. And it's a fun process, but it'll get you sometimes. You definitely need to take a break and then go perform it. But at this point, I love writing songs in my life to the point where I feel like I got a lot to say, but it's just getting it there, saying it right, you know, delivering it the correct way. I think there's a lot to do with it. So yeah.
I really like what you said about, you know, you're writing about what's going on in your life because it's going to connect with somebody. And I think that's kind of the reality of country music as opposed to other genres, is the fact of it does have a bigger connectivity to its audience, you know, because maybe you're going through a breakup, or, you know, like David Allan Coe talks about on You Don't Have to Call Me by My Name. You know, the song doesn't talk about trains and mamas and you know, and that kind of stuff. And because everybody's gone through that, everybody has been, you know, hung up by a train. Everybody's got mama, you know, and it's like all those things add up to life,
Yes.
and we
Yes.
all deal with that. And
And
that's one of the things I love about country is the stories. The stories that country music tells are just amazing.
that's the crazy thing about kind of being on the vessel side of that, because once you are on like that and you get a song that connects with people, it's like,
Mhm.
man, we wrote so many songs and so much went into that, so it just, for someone just to listen to it and take it in and for it to mean something to them, like,
Right.
and it's one of those moments in their lives where it's not, it doesn't last very long. They might like it for that time, come here a couple days later, oh yeah, I like that. But still, just that moment, that short moment where they're like, man, this song is really is saying and connecting with me and saying what I'm feeling. Uh, there's just nothing like it, man. There's just nothing like it. And then you get all those people in the same room together singing that song. Oh man, that's
Mm,
just. And we could get into theology on that, dude. I honestly think that that's what we are all created to do. We're all created to praise and sing and be together and, sing these songs together. And especially ones that are real to us. And
right.
that's the greatest thing about country music is that, and that, for me too, because man, I'm not good at like making stuff up. It's just hard. That takes a lot of work. Creating
Right.
a story, being George Lucas. My goodness, look at how long it took him to do 6 movies or whatever it was. Like,
Oh yeah.
it's a lot to make up stories. But and there is also nuances to songwriting. Like, man, you look at Ernest and like Ashley Gorley. Some of these guys that write these songs where you're just like, man, you spun that so good. Like,
Mhm.
dude, you said that so great. So there's definitely that aspect in it where you're trying to make it real, but also catch people's attention. It's like almost
Right.
like get their finger to stop scrolling on Instagram technique with the song.
Right.
Uh, so there's a lot in it, but being real, that's what I love about country music. It's just for me to get into country music, it was just this. It was as simple as this. It was real. It wasn't weird. I didn't have to try and be anything that I wasn't. I could play my guitar, and like my parents always told me growing up, like you're just destined to be a redneck and a cowboy. Like that's just what you are. So it's just in your blood. All right, and at first I tried to fight it, and now it's like, man, I'm grateful because I love
Right.
it. I love it. I love it to death. Love country music. And man, Al Jackson blues, man. My goodness, I could listen to that stuff for days. For
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. And one of the things like, country is always, and I've heard this said by other people, but it's always real and relatable.
Yeah.
You know, you think about Hardy and Wait in the Truck. You
Man.
know,
Yeah.
so many people can relate to that song. When you think of how many, millions of people are in the world, so many people can relate to that song, and it's a real song. I don't know his interaction with that. I don't know his,
Yeah.
what his past life, connection to that type of something is, but you can't tell me that there are not millions of people that understand where that song's coming from,
100.
you
When
know?
I think about that song, I'm like, how did they think to write that?
Yeah,
Like they had someone walked in the studio or in the room with a good idea that day because no one had thought about that yet. I
right.
haven't. I don't know a song about that, at least nowadays. And it's one of those things where like that type of situation is kind of new, you
Yeah.
know, to culture. And it wasn't really prevalent, in the
No.
70s and 80s. I don't believe I wasn't there, but it seems like it's more of a new something that would happen nowadays, and just a crazy story. Crazy story. You hear about, those types of things going down all the time.
Yeah,
And it's sad to hear about, but it's real, and that's what people want. That's it. And that's what connects with them, you know. It's just realness
exactly.
and the dirty truth, man. The dirty truth, man. That's just people just want to know the truth. Just want to know the truth. Because if it's not the truth, it's just like, it's just video games and comic
Yeah.
books. It's just, why even dabble in it? Because it's not true. It's not really happening. So
It's just another movie about another universe where there's a bunch of robots that talk in weird voices.
yeah, exactly. And my dad used to say that all the time to me. I'm like, Dad, you don't understand, man. It's cool. Now I'm like starting to sound like him completely. And it's like, okay, I understand what he's saying. You only watch the same thing so many times before it's just like, okay, this is boring. This is not
Right.
real. It has no effect on anything. And that stuff, and things that affect things matter, and to the soul. So, man, Way in the Truck. What a good example.
Mhm.
What a good example. My goodness.
Yeah. I mean, that's another good one that a lot of people, it may not have the same impact on a lot of people, but it's because they're not listening to it. I don't think as much. And that's Jelly Roll, Son of a
Son of a
Sinner.
Sinner, man. I love that song. I love that song. Oh,
Uh, that one's up there. And um, gosh, there's so many. I mean, I
I mean,
think,
Bailey Zimmerman with Rock in a Hard Place, man. That's a great.
yeah,
And how many times have you heard that phrase? Oh,
yeah,
man, I'm in a rock in a hard place. I've heard that so many times, but I've never heard someone sing that yet, and make
exactly.
it connect like that. That's the trick, right? Like,
Yeah,
this stuff has all been said before, but saying it in a way where it connects with people, and it's just like, that's what separates the kids from the pros,
right,
and
right.
then the way to connect with people is that truth, and also, gotta be catchy and all that good stuff and have good
Yeah,
production. But man, and the phrasing, then we could get all that stuff. Max Martin, musical math,
right.
phrasing, melody, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, if you got the right voice behind it and it's connecting, man, a song will change your life. Change
Yeah,
your life. And I truly believe that. I remember when I first started coming to town, people, it's all a song. It's all a song. That's all I'd hear everybody say. It's all a song. It's all a song. And the more I've been here, I always believed it. But now it's like, I believe it. I believe it.
yeah,
Song and hard work, especially out here in Nashville. You got to work your butt off and figure out, work your butt off, but work your butt off smart, I guess is a
right,
good way to put it, is what I've learned. And then make sure you get some dang good songs.
right,
So, some dang good
right.
songs, because that'll change everything, man. Change it all. Change it all.
And that's, yeah, that makes a difference. I mean, you could, um, if the song's not right, and it doesn't matter, you know, what kind of performer you are, if the song doesn't fit, if it doesn't fit you, and it's not in, to term a phrase from Brad, kind of your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Um,
Wheelhouse. Yeah.
it's it's not, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to make that song believable, and that's one of the things that's another thing I love about country. When you think about it, a lot of the stuff that country songwriters, and I'll put it that way because some people, a lot of people in Nashville write songs. Some people have people write them for them, but the songwriters have to know and experience what they're writing about. I think. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe even just a little bit, but they have to have some kind of working knowledge about what they're writing about.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
Or else it's just a fairy tale.
right,
And
right, and
you might not notice it right away, but your soul does.
right,
Your
and that
soul
takes
knows
away
it.
from the old country music adage, three chords and the truth.
Yeah.
You got to give them that truth.
Gotta give him the truth.
Yeah,
110% agree. And for me, like we were talking about, just becoming more of like authentic to yourself. That's what's gonna connect, I think, for me
right,
every time. And I think there's a lot of, especially for an artist, it's just stepping into that and just being it and not trying to put on a front for anybody, because once you get out here, there's a lot of fronts happening, and
yeah,
I've done it too. So it's something that we've all done. And, I think the best you can get away from that and just stay true to yourself. Like, I wrote a song the other day. It was, yeah, I was sitting in the room. I'm really excited about it too. I'm going to start doing some social media stuff with it. But,
okay,
the first verse is like, some days I really don't like you. Some days you want to throw me out. Some days I wake up knowing I'm making a bed out of this couch. It's about my wife and I, It's like, and we're around each other a lot more now than we used to be. And so it's, there's room and opportunity for offense to be had, get offended. And getting along is a little bit, of a struggle. And anyone in a real relationship has went through that. Anyone that's lived with somebody and been around them a lot, has went through that. And, and the hook of the song, don't anyone go steal this now, but it's, a good day with somebody new would never be better than a bad day with you, So it's like one of those things where it's just real. And I even just sitting here talking about it, it's like, man, that's my life. Like, yeah, some days I really don't like her, but man, I love her to death, and I'll never give her up. So
I'm laughing because I got to tell you this story. The other day, I was talking to my wife on the phone heading to work, and I was trying to remember something, and I couldn't remember it. And it was two different things. And I go, my gosh, I can't remember anything nowadays. And she was saying to me, kind of what you are. I love you. There may be days where I don't like you because, I left the freezer door open.
I've done that before.
Somebody's name. Yeah. And I go, I'm sorry. I said, I'm just brain dead. She goes, well, I said, you're going to put me in a home before long. And she goes, no. She said, when you start forgetting to zip up your pants, then we're going to talk.
She's like, I ain't dealing with that, George.
Yeah, I can deal with you leaving the freezer door open, but you're not going to leave the barn door open.
Oh man. And that comes a part of living together. And that's why, man, anyone that's made it in marriage and not giving up, kudos to you. Because you know how it is in marriage. Like there's going to be something that gets you riled up. And that's just the way it goes. We all have pride. We all want things done our way. And anyone that can, kind of put that aside and realize the bigger picture and what really matters instead of just making sure it happens exactly the way they want it to happen. Because I do it, the only reason I'm saying it is because I feel those feelings, when you could do that and put them first and, love them, put their desires before your own desires. There's a sweet little love dance that starts happening. It's so beautiful. But when it ain't happening, oh man, it's miserable. But it takes that to get into that zone. It takes you just kind of dying to yourself, And it's a crazy thing, man. Now we're getting into love.
Step out of your way and put them first. And
that's a song right there, man. Step out of my own way.
That's right.
Damn, I have to write that down. Let me write that. Step out of my own way.
I can give you titles. I just can't write a song. So speaking of songwriting, we've got one here that I want to share. Now, this is not your newest one because you just released one.
Yeah.
So, but I've got one here that's called All the Good Ones Do.
Yes.
And I want to play that and let people listen to it. And then we'll come back and we'll talk about the backstory on it.
Okay, perfect.
And kind of find out a little bit about it. So we're going to be right back with Johnny and myself. We'll be right back. But let's take 30 seconds to give a shout out to the sponsors. And then we're going to get into All the Good Ones Do with Johnny Day coming up in 30 seconds.
b4Nashville is proudly sponsored by Go-Go Tuners, the go-to tuner for professional and amateur musicians. Get your Go-Go Tuner at gogotuners.com. By Heart to Heart Coffee, the coffee that gives back. Find out more at heart2heartcoffee.com. By Sibby's Apparel, worn by heroes, made with respect. Order yours at sibbysapparel.com. And by Three Rangers Whiskey, not for the weak or faint-hearted. ThreeRangers.com.
Not every dive has a jukebox sitting in the corner. Spinning 45s from the past, taking nothing but a quarter. Still got a machine filled with Marlboro lights. Still let you smoke inside, but all the good ones do. Not every song makes you wanna get up and dance. Or says what you always wanted to say if you got the chance. Or makes you feel something you can't put into words. Can make you love, can make you hurt. But all the good ones do. Not every love keeps you up all night. Bad lows and better highs. Fighting fights that you never win. Nothing's right till you together again. Not every love's got what it takes. Knows how to bend and never break. Not every love lives to see it through. But all the good ones do. Not every girl makes 500 miles worth driving. Or get you promising the moon and you'll get it or you're gonna die trying. Yeah, not every kiss before it's done has you already thinking about another one. But all the good ones do. Not every love keeps you up all night. Bad lows and better highs. Fighting fights that you never win. Nothing's right till you together again. Not every love's got what it takes. Knows how to bend and never break. Not every love lives to see it through. But all the good ones do. Yeah, all the good ones do. Not every day's got a sky blue, or gets to start and end with you. But all the good ones do. Not every love keeps you up all night. Bad lows and better highs. Fighting fights that you never win. Nothing's right till you together again. Not every love's got what it takes. Knows how to bend and never break. Not every love lives to see it through. But all the good ones do.
All right, Johnny Day and all the good ones do. You were talking kind of earlier about, how writing songs, talking about the song that you wrote for you and your wife and kind of the, being that waking up on the couch and things like that. I
Yeah.
didn't write it down because I don't want that title around in case somebody should find it. But but that sounds like that was kind of one of those songs too, where all the good ones do. I mean, all the good relationships, they have those ups and downs and that kind of stuff.
Oh,
Is that a song that you wrote solely by yourself? Did you have co-writers on that, or
so the story behind this one. So I actually didn't write on that song,
okay?
but I love that song. So, and it matches what I'm going for. So that's why I cut it. Cause it's like, you kind of think I wrote it. So that was one of the reasons why I cut it. Cause it was just incredibly written song. That was actually a Liz Rose and, that was Corey. Jordan Reynolds. There's some crazy writers on that one. Crazy writers. So yeah, that song, not every love keeps you up all night. Ain't that the truth? Like that's, knows how to bend and never break. Cause there's some tough situations that you're going to go through in life. And
Right.
if that person can't hang around with you, it ends pretty quick. But if they do,
Right.
that's a good one. I honestly look at that song as a checklist. If you're ever wondering if you found the
Mhm.
one, just listen to that song and
Absolutely.
you'll know if you found the one. But yeah, that song holds a special place in my heart. It's definitely changed a lot of things for me. And, definitely it's one of those songs too, where it's set the bar very high for every release I do on out. So, Just so well written, man. Just so well written. Pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Pretty incredible.
Well, and when we were talking earlier, I told you I was writing down a question that I wanted to ask, and you answered that question just now, pretty much, because you do have other people that write songs that pitch them to you, or you get a chance to record them,
Yes.
and as opposed to having your hand in everything you write. Not that that's a bad thing, but sometimes you do. It's kind of like a child when you write a song. You just want to give it all the very best you can, but sometimes somebody comes along with a song that is just like that. You just go, man, I got to do this. I have to do this.
Yeah. When we heard that, I remember when I got pitched that song, I was like, how is this even available? Like, why hasn't someone cut this song, man? This is a huge song. And I'm just an independent artist. Like, what the heck? Like, how did I get this song? And especially, Jordan Reynolds and Liz Rose and Corey Crowder, like, they're no schmucks. Like,
Right.
they're incredible. So the fact that I even got that song, I mean, I felt very blessed. But yeah, it was one of those things where, I love writing my own songs. I love writing songs, but at the end of the day, I want to put out as many great songs as I possibly can that fit who I am and that relate to people and just be that vessel for the song as well. When it fits, right? Because it's just like you said, it's got to be the right voice, it's got to be the right person. If the song's not right, if it doesn't fit the performance, it just doesn't work.
Right.
And that one we felt like it did. And especially once I got in there and put my vocal on it and put my guitar stuff on there and really made it my own, it kind of transformed. But man, it's hard. And when it's a really good song like that, as long as you don't stink, like it's hard to make them bad,
Right.
And for me, like I'm pretty involved. I have two producers that I work with, the 720, Jared Ingram and Blake Hubbard. They're fantastic. Because before I had them, I was doing it all myself, and now I got, people to help me on this stuff, and they're incredible, and so I can just go in and play my guitar solos, lay it down, and really make it my own, sing a good vocal, and really make it connect. And some of that too, you just got to let that stuff marinate on your soul, especially when it's a different song that you didn't write. It's really got to like sit in deep and man, and definitely nowadays, especially in my career, I'm to the point where, man, if I'm gonna cut an outside song, it's got to be something that really resonates with my soul and that I could see myself saying and wanting to say to somebody. Because I've cut songs too that where I was kind of like, man, I wish I want to cut that song. Unfortunately, I do have songs like that. So, yeah, but all is fun, man. We're all figuring it out here. But I do love writing. Writing's a good time when it's good. Because man, I tell you what, man, that songwriting, people think, oh, you just go write a song, it sounds incredible. And it's hard, man. Songwriting, like Taylor Swift, all them, Hardy, Morgan Ernest, all those guys that are killing the songwriting game. That it's just all connecting with people. Dude, that is hard, man. That's what separates them. There's a lot of things that can help get those songs moved and people hear them, but man, at the end of the day, it's gotta connect. It's gotta connect, and
Right.
that's what I'm all about right now, man. Finding the next song that's gonna connect it, whether I write it or not. Man, I want to be that vessel. And this other thing about Nashville, like if people don't know, is there are so many incredible songs here that people have never heard. That I'm talking thousands of songs that people have just never heard. And I feel honestly blessed to be in this point in time with all these songs and these huge catalogs, and and to be at a point where I can like grab a couple of gems here and there and put them out. And so I definitely want to champion in my career. I definitely want to champion the writers in this town that are busting their butt every day, writing 3 songs a day, trying to get a cut, and put those songs out there.
Do when you talk about the writers and songs like that, do you feel, and I'm just talking like um, one day, okay, because you're talking about these writers who spend, trying to write 3 songs in a day, or writing 3 songs a day. Do you feel that the performance side or the writing side within that period is the toughest?
Like you mean performing, like what do you clarify that a little bit? Like you mean the
Like,
performance of the quality of the song they write, or
no, just overall performing, like doing a show. Is
oh
more taxing to do a show, or do you feel like I mean, because I mean that takes a mental toll on you to do that kind of stuff, and it is still tough when you think about what all you have to do to come up with a song. I mean, the average person
yeah,
doesn't understand what all goes into that.
yeah, and it's
So,
yeah,
I mean, does that make sense? Kind of which one would be more,
yeah. I'm following you now.
you
Um,
know?
so yeah, from my point of view, oh man, they're both pretty hard. I think live show stuff comes down to more of a for me at this point in my life in my career is more of a like when I'm getting ready for a show, I practice a lot and I think about everything, down to like the littlest things. So going out and performing for me, I guess the prep really is beforehand. So when I just get out there, it's more just like, okay, I'm just executing. So it's not too tolling actually performing. Because it's like I've already worked hard. It's like a football game. It's you're a little tired afterwards, but it's like, I was ready for this. Writing is, man, you're trying to create something. Uh, and I think especially in our brains, like it's not a physical exhaustion, but it's definitely a mental exhaustion. Uh, because yeah, it's just, man, like anyone that's ever created anything or came up with anything from scratch knows like once you get it's just tough. But once you get going and it's like, you're getting on a roll, it gets easier and easier and easier. You get that flow. But man, that's a good question. I don't know. I think it's easier for some. It's probably easier for me to go out and perform just because I really love performing. Uh,
Yeah.
but I also love writing songs. I love production too. So man, I love it all. I love it all. It's all fun. And I usually, and you're like this too. If I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna give it everything I got. So
Absolutely.
it's just how my dad wired. He just pounded it into my head when I was a kid, and nowadays it's like a curse because I just can't stop.
Mhm.
And that's how you got to kind of be in this whole thing. So yeah, either way, I think it's both pretty taxing. Uh, but songwriters, man, I think, man, that songwriting thing, that could be definitely be a little more mentally taxing and tolling.
Right.
You don't get the immediate response either. Like with a crowd, they're kind of fueling you. Um, with writing a song, you're kind of just like trying to search for gold. And
Right.
you don't really feel any kind of excitement until you put it on paper, or you record it and listen back to it. And sometimes when you write in the room, I've had some experiences where it's like we were just singing and we started singing something and it was like, whoa, that was really cool. Like, what was that? And sometimes
Mhm.
you just stumble upon it. It's just literally you're just kind of out gold hunting and
Right.
searching for gold. So that can be exhausting. But with the right people around you too, I think that's a big thing. Having the right co-writers as well that know you can definitely help that process be a lot
Right.
easier.
I know we've talked a lot about songwriting in this episode. And I love that because it's a side of the industry that I don't know a whole lot about.
Yeah.
Um and 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 I hate to leave a stone unturned, because I mean you're more than, I mean, you're a performer, you're a guitar player, you're a songwriter. Songwriting to me is the, I guess, the kind of the blood that flows to everything else, because
Yeah.
it's kind of the lifeline for everything. If you don't get those good songs, it's, there's not going to be a performance for one.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have to have that. And with that being said, I was reading an article. I mean, it's everybody here knows I work in radio during the day, and I'm always reading articles, trying to brush up on, you know, what people are saying, whether it's consultants or friends of mine that work with other stations, or, and I read an article the other day, and I'm trying to think of who it was that said it. Um, it was a consultant. I can't. It was a consultant. I'll just leave it at that, because if I know so many. If I say one, it'll be the wrong one. But what he said was that a lot of times when in radio as a programmer, you need to listen like a listener in order to make your station the very best it can be. Pull yourself away from the station. Pull yourself out of there. Don't be sitting in an office. Don't be in a production room or in a studio. Get out, get outside, ride, drive around, something like that. Is that kind of the same way with songwriting, that you have to think that way? I have to write this from the perspective, a partial perspective of country music fans. It kind of goes back to that whole, writing what relates. But do you ever go in thinking like that, thinking I've got to write this from the perspective of a country music fan, as well as being true to what I want it to sound like? I mean, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Another thing I've heard is people say, oh, he wrote that song for radio. No, don't. A thing to songwriters now, if you're ever in my presence and you say you wrote that for radio, that will be the last time you see my face.
Yeah.
Because there is nothing that you should be doing for radio.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You should do it for the fans. I wrote that for the
Amen. Amen.
So I've heard people say that before. Oh, that was a song written for radio.
That was a radio song. That sounds really
Mhm.
good on the radio. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, well, I'm out. See ya.
Yeah. And I could see from like a production standpoint where it's like, okay, that's a radio friendly production, right?
Right.
But like writing a song, man,
Mhm.
that's where you get like, because the words and the lyric is, man, oh my god, like the production matters, right? But there's a ton
Right.
of great producers around here,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they can make it sound really good. But the lyric and the melody is what's everything. It's everything. Like at the end of the day, and if people don't connect with that, if country music fans don't connect with that, you're just dead in the water.
Exactly.
It's what it is. So I think that's genius. The consultant, what he told you is just getting out of a studio and just like getting, out of the craftsman point of
Mhm.
view and just kind of going back to that first time, like what actually like made you want to start listening to this and what made you
Right.
want to get involved in this industry. I do that all the time. I went to Colorado. We drove out there for Christmas, and
Mhm.
it was a 18-hour drive, I think, total. And I
Yeah.
started at 4:30 or 3:30 in the morning, and I got there at like 10 at night. And I started with Merle. I went down, listened to probably 15 songs. Then I just listened to Brad Paisley. Then I listened to Glenn. And then I listened to Brad. And that was it. That's all I did the whole time. Just like when I was a kid with my dad, when we just listened to George, and I listened to George, on repeat, and just sitting there, not like trying to dissect the songs, just singing along,
Right.
and just having fun and listening to the lyric really now, like going back at a later stage in life and really listening to those lyrics. Cause you listen to them as a younger person, and I always listen to them, but it's been a minute since I heard some of those songs, and it's
Yeah.
a different perspective to listen to them. And just as a fan, just as like, wow. And then, I came back and I wrote some really good songs, and, which I thought they were pretty good. We'll see what happens. And I think so. Yeah, I think that's very valid. It all goes back to like what we were saying. Writing something that's true to you, and if you're country, and if you grew up in it, then it's going to be a lot easier to connect with the people. I think. And whenever you're trying to like write something for country music, I feel like you can kind of get into a I don't know, a rut or to a maybe a bad place because you're trying to write something for it. But if that's what you are and you're just writing about life, and it's gonna relate to them, just like what we were talking about. It's gonna relate to country folk because I mean, country folk nowadays, if you think about it, hunting, fishing, camping, riding horses. I mean, there's a lot more country folk than even know it. Like more people are country than they even realize. And
Right.
it's incredible. Like I didn't realize how country I was growing up, but then I look back, I'm like, man, dude, I was. And my wife too. She's like, she grew up, doing shows and everything and showing cattle and all this stuff, but she never considered herself a country girl. But it's like that's what you are. Like, like you don't even recognize it. And so I think, yeah, a lot of that just goes back to just writing stories about yourself. And if that's what you are, especially in country music, it's gonna relate. And that's what, man, it's just the meat of it. So that's kind of my answer to it. I don't know if that's the greatest answer. It's like be what you are and get in the right genre of what you are, because it's going to be a lot easier for you to be successful, especially as an artist and a songwriter. Well, but that goes again. So there are songwriters that cross genres, they go to pop, they go to country, and it's all kind of a vocabulary as well, right? Writing these country songs. But at the end of the day too, I mean, you see a lot of crossbreed between pop. Like some of these writers, these big writers can write a pop song, a pop hit, and then turn around and write a country hit. And
Right.
I mean, look at Holy by FGL. There was
Right.
Justin Bieber had that song on hold. There's a lot of people that had that song on hold. So yeah, man. I mean, Chris Stapleton and Justin Timberlake.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that. Some of that stuff where it's just like Chris Stapleton's a legendary country writer. And then here he is, doing some stuff, some pop stuff with Justin Timberlake. So, man, at the end of the day, too, I think it's a lot of it comes down to talent as well, because songwriting is a very talented, and you could tell when you get in the room with a talented songwriter, they
Oh,
are
yeah.
just like, they just start spitting stuff at you. And you're like, dude, like, wow. And, so yeah, I that's a very long answer to what you told me or what you asked. And,
Right.
there's a lot of ways about going about it, but I think just at the end of the day, like you said, getting out of it, going and being
Right.
a fan, coming at it from their perspective, and then just being who you are, that's especially as an artist. I guess that's more of an artist perspective. Is like for me, it's just being who I am. As a writer, you are kind of tailoring yourself, trying to write for a specific audience. But at the same time, you look at Taylor Swift. She was writing country songs, but she was just writing it from a little girl's perspective.
Right.
A lot of it comes down to just how good you are at making something very complex very simple, right? Because I mean, you
Yeah.
look at that. My kids, my 3-year-old daughter sings, "One day I'll be living in a big old city," and and it's like she's sitting there singing it, and she's 3 years old. She can hardly talk, but she sits there and
Right.
she can sing that melody, and it's like that's what it's all about, right there. To me, that's what it's all about, right?
Right.
Man, and you put some country production on that, and it's like, dude, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit
Yeah.
because it connects. Every little girl's felt that feeling, and there's a lot of country little girls, and there's a lot of city little girls that felt that feeling. And man, it's just, man, this is such a complex, nuanced subject. We could go on for hours about this, George. We could
I
go on
know.
about this for hours. We could sit here for hours and talk about this because it's something I pondered a lot. Like, what
It's
is
kind
it?
of philosophical.
Yeah, because there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, and it actually is. It's a very philosophical question, and it's one that would do just that. I mean, it would make you think. I would love to pose that question to. I mean, you and I can sit here for hours, but I really think if I asked Chris Stapleton the same question, he and I could sit there for hours. And if
Oh,
it's the three
man.
of us, we're all going to be there for hours because we're going to be, I'm going to be sitting back listening because I want to know what your opinion on that is.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is like you said, and I didn't think of that when I asked the question. But yeah, it's not a world problem. It's going to be solved in a day. You're going to have to, there's a lot of different angles and areas and things that go into that. And I just think it's so, uh, and I guess that's one of the things that I love about the industry and about the artist and their passion for what they do.
Yeah.
Because just like that, you can go on for hours talking about that, where you might ask that of somebody in the pop world or the rock world is going to be like, 3 words, next question.
Yeah.
You know, here's
Yeah.
my answer. Okay, now let's move on.
Yeah. I guess that's true. I guess that's true too.
Yeah.
I remember writing some of those rock songs when I was a kid. Like, I'll just scribble something in there,
Mhm.
just come up with a cool melody. Just figure something to sing over this guitar riff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of what
Exactly.
it is sometimes, especially in
Yeah.
rock music. And that's acceptable. And people like that, teach their own. That's kind of
Yeah.
that format. But
Some
country
rock
music is
music.
different.
Yeah. Oh, and that's what I love about country. And it's so funny because I even heard, or I was reading the other day again, um, talking about accessibility of country music artists. And I've said this for a long time. Country music artists are the most accessible people in the world when it comes to their fans, and for the
Yeah.
most part. Now there are
Yeah.
some that may not be, but
Yeah.
for the most part. But when you compare them to rock or especially pop or urban or any of that, you're never going to have, um for instance, like Rihanna, performed at the Super Bowl. She's never gonna. She will very seldomly. Let me take that back. Very seldomly show up inside a radio station to have an interview with the personalities that are there. Chris Stapleton will do that.
Oh yeah.
Kenny Chesney, depending on his time, he might go in, but he will always call. Garth Brooks, Garth will always call. If he can make it into a radio station, he will go in. It's just that accessibility between country music artists and their fans and the people that um, are there to help them along with their career
Mhm.
is just so much easier than any other genre. And I know this to be true because I've dealt with just about all of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but I just love that about it's all that family. That's kind of
Yeah.
the it's a core of a family.
That is the truth. And that's how, like, being in Nashville for, full time now since April. Uh, man, just some of the friends I have too. It's artist friends. We're all kind of in competition together, but it's like not a competition because it's like if one of us does great, we're all friends, and we all kind of rise together. Um, and having that family culture in country music is,
Right.
man, that because that's why that's a country music thing, to go to the radio stations and visit them all and talk to everyone and develop those relationships, because that's what country music is all about. It's all about relationships, with your fans, with the industry, with everything you do. And I think that's why it's so powerful. And social media is crazy because it's kind of highlighted that, I think, as well.
Right.
Like, you could see like a lot of these big stars doing a lot of, like, Keith Urban, man. My goodness, man. Some of the stuff that you get to see is just crazy nowadays. It's crazy what some of the stuff they allow you to see is just incredible. And
Oh yeah.
I can't imagine being in your or in your shoes, seeing all the different, genres and how they work. I feel sorry for you, man.
Yeah. It can be overwhelming, I promise you.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's but I do everything I do is for the exact same reason you do, and that's because I love it.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what it boils down to.
yeah,
You know, I love country music. I love the radio industry side of country music. There are things about both that I may, uh, uh, we love Nashville, but there may be things about Nashville in certain areas that I'm not going to mention. Um, but there may be things that I don't agree with the way they do things, but that does not for me take away from the reason that I love the genre of country music. It's the
Oh,
music and it's the family dynamic that
yeah.
comes along with country music.
Man, and that's a philosophy. That's a philosophy right there. It's just people, man. We just want that family is like what we all crave, and especially when we could be in unison and in agreement with our peers, and we can all come together because we love something. There's just something special and powerful about that, like prayer. People
Yeah.
in unity thinking about something, and it's just incredible. Yeah, and that's why I love country music. And then you all start talking the same language, kind of start singing the same, then you kind of start playing the same guitar licks, and then they're wondering like, why does country music sound that way? Well, it's because like everyone down here kind of thinks alike, and they're all kind of got the same goals, and they're all kind of talking like each other, and it's just what it is. It's a cool thing to be a part of. It's a phenomenon. Honestly, Nashville is a phenomenon, and then anyone that wants to get into country music, if you're waiting on coming here, you better come here and get in the mix because things are
Right.
happening, man, and this is where it happens. And I believe that now more than ever. I don't care, man. You could do whatever you want. TikTok and all that stuff, it definitely helps getting discovered, but you still got to be here.
Exactly.
Still got to be here.
You got to be in the city.
Yeah.
You got to be in Nashville in order to get it done. And it's so and I think a lot of people, they kind of think, oh well, we don't have to go down there anymore. Huh? No, you do. You
Oh,
really
yeah.
do.
You-
You may
and it-
not have to go door to door on Music Row like you had to 20
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
but you can't, you know, you can't be as involved and be out of there.
Well, and it's just like being in Nashville is more than just meeting the people too. It's just being around people because you're going to learn things that you've never thought of, and you're going to become something that is going to exceed your expectations because the people down here are phenomenal, very talented. And you get in the room, like back where I come from, I was the best guitar player. I could do it all, like that was what it was. And I come out here and I'm like, damn, man, I need to practice, and that's what makes you great, and I'll
Right.
believe that till the day I die. Like, it's just incredible being out, like singing with everyone out here. It's just
Mhm.
it's just going to make you a better artist. At least that's for me. Like, I know it's made me a better artist, better singer, better guitar player coming out here and just seeing like, okay, this is the competition. All right. This is like, you thought you were
Yeah.
pretty good, but you come out here, these people are not messing around. Like, this isn't a hobby. This isn't a hobby for anyone out here. This is the deal, man. And these people are serious. And just being in that atmosphere with people that are serious about what they're doing it changes everything. Because back home, when I was at home, like people are like, oh yeah, you do country music, that's pretty cool. People down here, it's like they take you seriously because they take
Right.
themselves seriously. And that's incredible. Just having that is, man, creates a lot.
It does. It really does. We have gotten philosophical. We've gotten
Man.
in depth in some conversations. We've talked about songwriting and kind of maybe straightening out some of Nashville's problems. I don't know.
Who knows?
But it's been a blast, Johnny, talking to you. We're going to have to do another one here before long because I feel like we still have about 5 hours of conversation that we have to finish up on.
Yes, sir. You just let me know when.
We have just touched the iceberg.
Yes. I don't know if you even got to all the questions either because we kind of went off on tangents there for a while. But that's what it's all about.
I think I asked one, and that was it.
That's what it's all about.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So, but if they want to find out like more about you, where you're playing, stuff like that, where's the best place for them to go?
So best place to go is my website, Johnny Day Official, or Instagram, JohnnyDayOfficial.com is the best place to go. I'm playing Whiskey Jam next week. If you're in Nashville on Monday, got a new song that came out on Valentine's Day called Better Part. And man, I just really appreciate you letting me come on, George, and do this whole thing and get into some cool conversation with you.
Absolutely, man. Well, we'll get back together very, very soon. And at least hopefully sometime before long, we can get together and sit down, maybe have a conversation in Nashville.
That'd be great.
Kind of, carry this on
Yeah.
I just don't want it to be too late because I don't want your wife to worry. I have to, assure her he's in safe hands.
She trusts
We're
me.
just
She trusts me. She
You're
better.
talking about, if you're anything like me, we get on a conversation like that, time is gone.
Oh, same here. And that's why I love it. That's why, and that's how you know it's a good conversation is when you forget about time. And I mean, I don't know what time it is now. What, hour and 20 minutes we've been talking.
Yeah,
It doesn't feel like I feel like I just got on this call with you. So
I
thank
know
you.
it's crazy. But go to Johnny's his website, Johnny Day Official. Check him out. The links for everything are right there. All of his social media. You can just click on the links and find them. You also have your schedule up there where you're playing. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. So you can find out where he's playing, and then next time we get a chance to have a conversation, I'll be sure to advertise that. So those of you who feel like we still didn't touch on everything, you can tune in. But this could be a very long podcast the next time we talk.
Hey, I'll just block a couple hours.
There you go. You go. So you guys take care. This is up on it'll be up on all the streaming platforms here before long, on Spotify, iHeart, all that stuff. I'll get this episode put up to where you can listen to it there if you want to listen to it. But until then, y'all take care and have a great evening. All right. Thanks, Johnny.
See ya.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow B4Nashville on all social media and listen wherever you get your podcast. Tune in again for another country star of tomorrow on B4Nashville with George Davis. I'm Kevin Casey on behalf of Worldwide Pants. Have a great night.